Hi, I'm Dinesh Kaul, and I'm here today with a team of about 6-7 people, and we are going to discuss microgrids, an introduction to microgrids, and some of the key issues relating microgrids. And there might be some questions from my colleagues here, and I thought it is a good idea to record it and to share it with everybody who's interested to know more about microgrids. After this, you can feel free to contact me on email or LinkedIn or on Facebook on my company's ID. The links will be shared. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we are gathered here to talk about microgrids. And while I'm talking, this is an open session, so we can always have questions, answers, and have an interactive session if you feel like it. Ask me, interrupt me anytime, and I'll see what best I can reply. So what we'll be covering today essentially is what is a microgrid, what are the applications, what are the factors that affect its quality, what are the components of a microgrid, and which are the main design aspects of microgrid. This is what we'll be discussing, right? So does that sound okay?
Yes, sir.
So why do we need a microgrid? Let us first of all examine that. What is the need for us to install a microgrid? After all, you have electricity, you have DGs. Why do we need a microgrid? Now, sitting in Delhi or any of the metro cities, you'll always feel, oh, there's power availability is pretty good. I don't need any microgrid or anything. But there are multiple areas like remote villages where even government has not laid any electricity lines. Then there are people can't pay for it. They need cheap electricity. They may not be able to pay more than 20, 30, 40 rupees a month for electricity. So in that cases, you need to have a microgrid. Even in urban jungles like we live in, microgrid has a utility, and I'll explain why it has a requirement. Then in disaster management centers, in case there is a hurricanes in Orissa, off and on every year there are hurricanes, there are storms, power lines are disrupted. So how does a district magistrate use the telephone? Because the mobiles will be off, they need charging, so you need a microgrid. In military, in remote areas, on the border areas, you need a microgrid because that is the only power that will be available on mountains, and in Siachen you cannot have, in desert area you cannot have power lines. You cannot carry diesel, you cannot carry DG, you cannot have diesel coming in for running that DG every day. So these are the reasons why military can utilize microgrids efficiently. Then remote hilly areas, you want to go to Ladakh airport. Now, what do they run? They run it on a DG. And even the DG, the temperature is so low that you have to heat up the DG for half an hour before the DG can even start, because the diesel also gets frozen. So that is another area where microgrids are needed. Then oil pipelines. So if you have a cross-country oil pipeline, how do you power up the pumping stations, the instrumentation? The only way you can do it is either you have DGs at each of the station, but if you have DGs at each of the station, then you have to deliver diesel to that. Now that also becomes a problem and it becomes costly. That is where a microgrid can be most efficient. Then home users, bank ATMs, using as a UPS, telecom towers. So all of these are potential uses of a microgrid. So it is not that even if we have not heard much about microgrid, it doesn't mean that microgrids are not prevalent or they are not needed. You'll be surprised that in California, which is the whole GDP of California in US is higher than of India. And in spite of that, they are using microgrids. There is a utility. And obviously, everywhere you use a microgrid, the cost of electricity goes down because it is being powered by solar. So microgrids have a usage in remote areas as well as the urban areas. So it is not confined only to one area, right? So this is the reason that these are the areas where we need microgrids. So we'll go to what are the problem that a microgrid will solve, right? So first is what are the applications, second is what problems does a microgrid solve. So first and foremost, it saves the environment, and today it may not seem to be much of a need. I mean, we have a reasonable environment in which we live in, but the way environment is going bad, the way carbon emissions are destroying our environment, the way glaciers are melting, the day is not far off where our children will feel that they don't have a suitable environment to live in. So for basic survival of life, we need to improve environment, and for that we need microgrids, solar power, green energy. So that is first and foremost. Now second is reliability of power. So you have a microgrid, it will take care of if your DG knocks off, if your grid knocks off, your battery backup and your solar power is going to supply you power. Then in urban areas, you can have an application where when you are running a DG, let's say 250 kVA DG, and it gets overloaded by 10%, 25 kVA. So do you start another DG? What do? Or you run a bigger DG, 350 kVA DG, so that your short-term loads are taken care of. And normally you're happy enough with 250 kVA. That is where a microgrid kicks in. So a microgrid can deliver that extra kick for a short time for 25 kVA. So the DG doesn't get overloaded, it doesn't trip. So that is one. Similarly for transformer, you have a 1000 kVA transformer and you have a peak of 50 kVA for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. A huge load starts. So that is where a microgrid can kick in for a short time, supply power, and then go back to the charging position. So that is another reason. So then another problem it solves is essential services. So you have these Essential Service Maintenance Act, but this is what the essential services need. They need some backup power. Even a power station needs a backup power battery charging station. That can be given by a microgrid. So you need not use the costly grid power or DG power to charge the battery backups which that are needed to maintain a substation. It can be done this way. There is a need for energy in rural areas, in remote areas. You will enhance the quality of life of a lot of people by supplying them power through a microgrid. Remote, hilly areas, what we were talking about, which are where access to energy is not available. So you can lift in India maybe 25% of the population and supply them power to do simple tasks, to earn their livelihoods, to run their atta chakki, to charge their mobiles, maybe for education, for for their children to study. So all of that is enabled by microgrids. So it is a very, very key component for any economy, and especially an economy like India. So that is other reasons why we need to have microgrids. So what are the basic components? Very simple. It is not a very complicated solution. So you have a PV module, which is the basic component to capture the sun rays and convert it into DC energy. Then you use it to charge battery. So you need to have a battery charger. Then you want to convert that battery energy or PV energy into electricity, 230 volt, 110 volt, 415 volt, whatever, single phase, three phase, whatever the need is there. So for that you need an inverter. And so you have battery, inverter, PV, then you can couple a DG into it. So you have a generator which can act as a backup. Or let us suppose battery has been running and is getting discharged. The DG will automatically start, charge the battery, and again get off. Charge the battery and supply the load, both of the things are there. So you can, even in areas where you have grid, like in urban areas, so you can have grid also connected to it. So you can have the first priority going to solar, second priority going to grid, third priority going to battery. So this is how you can configure, or depending on the load profile, you can change these parameters, you can reconfigure it. So these are the basic components. Any questions till now, or are we comfortable?
Isn't it similar to Offgrid solar system?
Sure, okay. So you can have a microgrid which acts as a off-grid system, right? So the difference between an off-grid and hybrid system is, in off-grid you cannot export the power out. So whereas in a hybrid you can. So if you remember, I was just discussing with you that in case of a DG, if it is getting overloaded, then some fractional amount of power can be supplied by the microgrid, right? So if it is a hybrid system, it can do that. If it is an off-grid system, the load is either on grid or on battery. It cannot, both of the powers cannot converge. They cannot become single. They cannot be synchronized. But in a hybrid microgrid system, it can synchronize with grid, it can synchronize with DG. So classification wise, actually you can have two type of microgrids. One which is off-grid microgrid, and second you can have a hybrid microgrid.
It is more than like hybrid solar system.
Actually, it is a hybrid.
My point is, what is the basic difference between a solar system and a microgrid? Means if I want to use a hybrid solar system, that मतलब क्या advantages होंगे कि मैं microgrid, I should go with microgrid.
So a microgrid system is a hybrid solar system which can communicate and synchronize with DG, grid, biogas, wind turbine. So you have multiple sources of power, and then you get an optimum mix of which power to use when. So that is what a microgrid is. So essentially it is a
advanced version or
a much more advanced version of a hybrid solar power plant, or even a off-grid solar power plant. It is a classification when we are using it as a source of power to a community rather than to a household. So normally you have an off-grid power plant or a hybrid power plant which supplies to a residence or a commercial place. But when you're using it to supply to a whole community, whether it is a huge building, whether it is a couple of industries or 5-6 industries, a group of industries, or it is a remote village or some institutions, when you put all of them together and then you are using multiple sources, that is when it is called as a microgrid. Is that okay? Anything else?
A simple on-grid system is also a microgrid.
On-grid we do not call as a microgrid, because on-grid is dependent on solar power being available. So if solar power is not there, you don't have a backup.
That's not a standalone system.
It is not a standalone system.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is why microgrid can use on-grid systems, and we can discuss that. In fact, when I said among components, you can have inverter is a key component. So you can have two type of inverters. One which converts DC into AC, battery DC into AC. So that would be a DC. That would be a hybrid inverter or an off-grid inverter. But if the load consumption is higher during the day, then to charge the batteries, we'll have some on-grid inverters. So which will couple with the hybrid or off-grid inverter and give us a AC coupled system. So you can have a DC coupled system or you can have a AC coupled system. AC coupled system are used when the power is being utilized during the daytime. Then it is far more efficient to use on-grid inverters which synchronize with battery power or DG power or grid power. So that is a that is a much better utilization. But if the load is utilization is more during the night time, then DC coupled systems are better efficiency wise. So that is how we optimize. That is the design part of it. Now let's move on to what are some of the quality aspects. The biggest aspect is the design. I'm sorry, I need a little water. But design is such an important aspect of it that I will talk about design separately. So, first of all, your backup system, your microgrid should not need any backup. In the sense that it should be a reliable system. Use components from companies like Schneider, where the efficiencies are high, which is another very important quality aspect, and where the reliability is high, where you get, let's say, 5-year warranty, standard, which is the minimum warranty that you can get. So your quality aspect, that is one of the quality aspects. Reliability of the product should be high. Reliability of the company to give you backup services should be high. So that is another aspect on quality. The temperature range in place where it is installed could go from -5 to 50 degrees centigrade. Looking at the summers and winters that we have in India. So that is important that the temperature aspect of your product should be able to take that. And you have to keep in mind that the battery should also be suitable for that. If the battery is not suitable, then you have to make arrangements for that also. Then efficiencies should be not only monitored at 100%, because most of the suppliers will give you efficiencies at 100%, which is no good, because most of the times you'll be running it from 25 to 75%, 80%. So your efficiencies should be aligned to what your load is going to be. If your load is going to be 50% most of the time, then your efficiency at 50% must be pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to ensure that. Battery backup should be good. That's a very, very key component. Your battery backup, we will talk that in design. So these are some basic parameters on quality. The component quality should be excellent. Then after that, then the design comes in. Then your design should be good. In design, some of the aspects you have to take care of, which you need to discuss with the client, understand the load profile, are what is the autonomy that you require. The autonomy means how many days of battery backup do you need if there is no sun. It could be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, depending on the weather requirement. The local weather will dictate what kind of autonomy you require, and of course the load also will dictate that. So balance of when do you want to start the DG and stop the DG? What is the DoD of battery, depth of discharge of battery, state of charge of battery, when you will enable the DG and when will you cut off? So this is an important design aspect that you need to take care of. Then you need to select your PV very, very carefully, because 15 kilowatt का आप एक microgrid लगा रहे हैं छोटा सा, तो everybody will say okay 15 kilowatt of PV is required, and which is incorrect. That is absolutely the wrong thing to say. So a design of PV is as per the load and as per your charging of the battery. Now let us suppose your load is 15 kilowatt and you have 15 kilowatt of PV. For a minute we'll say that it is 100% efficient system.
It is not possible.
So 15 kilowatt PV will only run the load. It will not charge your battery at all.
True.
So what will happen during the night? So you need to make sure that your PV is designed for losses, your PV is designed for battery charging, and your PV is designed for running the load also. And you will find for 2 days autonomy, you may even need maybe if in a 15 kilowatt, you may need 30 or 40 kilowatt of PV. So that is a very, very important aspect of design. And as we were discussing earlier, that user load profile, what is hour by hour, if you can get every hour consumption, the peak load, nominal load, and the minimum load. If you have all of this data, then it can be the system can be designed much better. And we can even decide whether we want to go in for an AC coupling or we want to go for a DC coupling. So these basic decisions are taken on the user load profile. That is a part of the design. Then your system should be expandable, because what happens is you go to a remote village. Today you give them power for one bulb and charging your phone. The moment they start charging their phone, somebody starts studying, they will want to connect maybe a computer, maybe they will want to connect a fan during the summers. So it will keep on expanding. So with time, your system, your microgrid should have expandability. It should be modular. Your system should be 15 kilowatt, add another 15 kilowatt, add another 15 kilowatt, and so on. Or it could be even have 250 kilowatt, then add another 250 kilowatt, then add 1 megawatt. So microgrids can be from very, very small to megawatt range and megawatt hour of batteries. So that is user load profile. Expandability. Then nature of load. Your will define what kind of battery you select, what kind of inverter you select, because the discharge rate of a battery can be 1C, 2C in a lithium ion battery, and some cases 3C also. But what if your load is needs a higher discharge? Then you need to select a different battery. So your definition also varies with the nature of load and how you are selecting your battery and what is the rate of discharge that you need from battery. Your lead acid battery would give you C/10 discharge rate, which means you can charge the battery in 10 hours and you can discharge it in 10 hours, which means even if you have 1000 AH, you can actually use only 100 AH per hour. Otherwise the battery life will diminish and you'll have a problem. So long life design is also very, very important in this. I mean, it sounds a very complex, but it really is not very complex. The design is not, but you have to factor in all of these issues before you can come to a very responsible design, which is totally aligned with the needs of the client. Temperature suitability, we already discussed. So that's about what I had to say about microgrids. Preliminary. Of course, it's a huge subject and there are many details we can go into. And if you found it interesting, do get back to me. Give us a like on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever. And I look forward to your questions and further discussions, or any kind of help that you may need in microgrids. I'd be most helped to share with you. Thank you. Bye.